Newt Gingrich at the Iowa Freedom Summit got a standing ovation while discussing killing and war. Let's listen.
Almost 14 years after 9/11, the United States today is losing the war with radical Islamists. And we have to have the courage to confront how badly we are doing in this war. And not just as an anti-Obama comment, the State Department was about equally bad, frankly, under George W. Bush. The unwillingness to tell the truth about who our enemies are was equally bad after the first year, because gradually all of these so-called experts kept saying, oh, you can't really tell the truth about who they are because that might confuse other people, and so why don't you make up strange terms? And, you know, it became bizarre. I look around the planet at suicide bombings, I look at beheadings, I look at all these different things going on. They don't strike me as a Rotary Club conspiracy or, you know, the Kiwanians running amok. There is one common pattern occurring everywhere across the planet, and that is radical Islamists who hate our civilization, are prepared to cut off our heads, and are determined to impose their religion by force. I have no problem with Muslims who are prepared to live in diversity. But if you are a Muslim who believes you're going to impose Sharia by cutting off my head, I have a desire to kill you before you cut off my head.
Okay, I watched a lot of this event, and that was by far the biggest applause line and standing ovation that I saw throughout the entire event. Now, Newt, I get it. All progressives get it. All of us get it. That, yeah, ISIS is terrible. Radical Islam is horrible. Fundamentalism is a scourge. We are all against it. But the question is, number one, where are they? And number two, what should we do about it? So the question to where are they is, they're in Syria and Iraq. They're not in Nebraska. So this idea of like, I want to kill them before they cut off my head. But if they're not a direct threat to the United States of America, and they're not, there's no intelligence to suggest that they are, then why should we get involved? I mean, there's a war going on right now between Shiites and Sunnis in the Middle East. You have Iran gearing up to fight against ISIS, the Sunni extremists. Iran, of course, is Shiite. If America, and they say they don't like either side in this, right? If that's your position, then why would you want to get involved? What are you going to do? You're going to pick a side when you don't like either side? That doesn't make any sense. So where are they? They're not here, Newt, and that's why this violates the true principle of how we should act when it comes to foreign policy and when it comes to how we act internationally. Because I've said, and many libertarians have said, and the majority position of the American people is the idea of non-interventionism. Not pacifism, but the idea that we're not going to fuck with you unless you fuck with us. We're not going to strike you unless there's an imminent threat of attack against us. And right now, that's just not the case. ISIS does not have an air force. They do not have a navy. You know, this isn't Nazi Germany. They have maximum, what, anywhere from 10,000 to 30,000 people. Now, that's a lot. But the United States of America, our military, millions of people. We have the biggest military the world has ever known. And it's also guerrilla warfare. And that's another thing that Newt Gingrich doesn't understand, is that the U.S. cannot win a guerrilla war. And we've shown that with Vietnam as the perfect example. What happened in Vietnam? We couldn't win because it was guerrilla warfare. So what are you going to do? Are you going to root out all radical Islamists by going all around? So you'd have to invade Syria with ground troops, Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, Pakistan, Somalia. I'm sure there's plenty in Turkey. They're all over the place. There's some pockets of it in more modern nations. I mean, we saw in Australia with the attack there recently. You can't win by fighting a traditional war and going in there in John Wayne style with guns blazing, because then what happens? You end up killing civilians, and then that further radicalizes the region, and you end up giving them what they want, a better recruitment tool. See, that's the thing these guys don't understand. They walk right into the trap. Now, there's one thing I agree with Newt Gingrich on when he said, well, 14 years later, after the start of the war on terror, we're losing the war. Yes, I agree with that, Newt. But you have to come to the logical conclusion. You have to continue with that thought. Why are we losing the war? Because of how we've been fighting it. And we've been fighting it the way that you wanted to fight it from day one. You wanted to fight it militarily. You didn't want to fight it with intelligence. You didn't want to fight it in a targeted fashion. You didn't want to fight it in a policing way. What did you want to do? You wanted to do exactly what we did. And that's why we're losing. So we start all these wars. We kill all these people. We literally spend over $7 trillion between all the wars from the beginning of the war on terror. And what's Newt Gingrich's answer? Let's do more of that and maybe we'll win again. But I just explained to you how the numbers have shown that there are more terrorists today, and there are more terrorist groups today than there were in 2001. So it's gotten worse. What's the old definition of insanity? Trying the same thing over and over and expecting a different result? So my disagreement with Newt Gingrich is that his solutions are illogical. But he paints it like as if Democrats and progressives don't understand that ISIS is bad. No, like, of course we understand that. And of course we're against them. The question is, how do you address the situation? And unfortunately, another thing he doesn't mention is that the sad truth is I think President Obama agrees a lot more with Newt Gingrich's philosophy than he does with my philosophy, and than he does with the idea of non-interventionism and actual national defense. So, Newt, he's kind of on your side, but yet you're bashing him for not being more war hawkish, which really says a lot about Newt Gingrich. That it doesn't really matter any of the details, any of the specifics. His answer is always more war.